You ever feel like your life is running on autopilot, and somehow your car payment is the thing keeping it there, like it's a quiet chain around your wrist that no one talks about, but you feel every month when the statement hits your inbox? You tell yourself it's a small price to pay, just a number on a paper, a way to have what everyone else seems to have: a nice car, a little status, a sense of "I'm doing okay." But deep down, you feel it tugging at something heavier: your freedom, the very way you measure yourself against the world. And if you're someone who cares too much, that tug becomes a constant whisper in your nervous system, reminding you that you're never doing quite enough. People who care too much live in a peculiar kind of tension. Neuroscience tells us that empathy and hyperresponsibility light up the same circuits in our brains that respond to danger. Your mirror neurons fire so vividly that you feel other people's stress as if it were your own. You overthink, overplan, overgive, all in the hope of keeping the world calm and everyone else safe. And when a car payment, something society has normalized as mundane, enters the equation, it triggers something deeper than financial anxiety. It's a reminder that stability is fragile, that security is conditional, and that maybe, just maybe, you're responsible for more than you should be. When you buy that car, it feels like freedom at first. The leather seats, the quiet hum of the engine, the mirror reflecting a version of you that is capable, adult, admired. And yet, with each monthly bill, the freedom begins to twist. What was supposed to be liberation slowly becomes obligation. The psychology behind this is subtle but pervasive. Behavioral scientists call it the commitment consistency bias. Once you commit, your brain nudges you to remain consistent, even when the cost outweighs the benefit. You start to justify, you start to bend, you start to care too much about appearances, about what people think you should have, about the idea of failing because of a number on a statement. For someone who carries the weight of other people's expectations, this becomes an emotional echo chamber. You feel responsible not only for the payment but for how it looks to others. You worry your friends, your family, even your co-workers will judge you if you admit it's a strain. You tell yourself that the sacrifices you make are noble, but they are also quietly exhausting. The car, once a symbol of pride, begins to feel like an anchor to an invisible expectation, and your brain, ever sensitive to perceived threats, starts scanning for problems. What if something unexpected happens? What if I can't pay next month? What if this choice makes me less? This is the insidious part, because caring too much isn't about logic. It's about emotional survival. There's also a darker, more hidden layer. People pleasers by nature often equate self-worth with utility. The more you do, the more you give. The more you appear capable, the more you are valued. So when a car payment or any financial obligation demands attention, your inner dialogue starts whispering, "If I can't handle this, what does that say about me?" You begin to overwork. You delay joy. You sacrifice small comforts to keep up the illusion of stability. Psychology calls this the over-justification effect. The more you do something to avoid guilt, the less you feel intrinsic satisfaction. Caring too much amplifies this effect. Your generosity, your dedication, even your financial decisions are no longer about choice, they become armor. But here's the paradox. This same sensitivity that can trap you can also save you. When you notice the strain, when you feel the invisible tension in your body, that awareness is a signal, not a flaw. It's a neural nudge telling you something here is misaligned. And if you can listen, really listen, it can lead to a breakthrough. You can begin to separate the parts of yourself that care out of love from the parts that care out of fear. You can see the car for what it is: a tool, not a measure of your worth. You can recognize that the tension is not an indictment, but a message. You've been overextending yourself, and it's okay to step back. The healthy side of this, of course, is liberation. When you learn to care without self-erasure, obligations stop feeling like chains. You make decisions with intention rather than guilt. You can enjoy your car without letting it define your identity. You pay your bills without letting them dictate your emotional state. Neuroscience calls this self. It's when the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans, reflects, and reasons, calms the overactive threat responses in your amygdala. In plain language, your rational self finally gets to lead, and your survival anxiety self can rest. And yet, the unhealthy side is still lurking, subtle, tempting. Caring too much is addictive. It feels noble. It feels right. You might convince yourself that sacrificing sleep, peace, and joy for the sake of keeping appearances is proof of character. The car payment trap is not just financial, it's psychological. It leverages that addiction, turning a practical obligation into a silent measure of worth. Every late night, every extra shift, every skipped meal, every avoided conversation with a friend, it all becomes evidence that your life is under siege and only your hypercare can keep it afloat. And that's exhausting because it's invisible work. The kind of work that never earns praise, only stress. But here's where the cinematic truth enters. Freedom isn't just about money, it's about choice. The first time you recognize that the tension isn't about the car, it's about your own patterns, you feel something shift inside. Maybe you refinance, maybe you make a budget, maybe you have a real conversation about needs versus wants. But deeper than any financial maneuver is the realization that you can exist outside the expectations that you've been carrying. You don't have to prove worth through sacrifice. You don't have to prove love through endurance. You don't have to prove stability through a payment. This is the quiet, late-night awakening. You start to see the chains, understand their origin, and slowly begin to remove them. You begin to care in a way that nourishes, not depletes. You notice how deeply you've been conditioned to overgive, to overassume, to overcarry. You grieve the energy lost, the opportunities missed, the joy deferred. But you also recognize that this same depth is what makes you empathetic, connected, capable of profound love. The trick is to redirect it inward, without guilt, without apology. And in that awareness lies a subtle liberation. You may still pay your car, you may still care, but your nervous system no longer believes it's a question of survival. You can breathe, you can rest, you can enjoy the ride without letting it define your value. The chains are still there, but now you hold the key. You understand that boundaries are not betrayal, that saying no is not selfish, that your sensitivity is a compass, not a burden. And in this space, caring becomes a choice, not a compulsion. So tonight, as you reflect in quiet moments, ask yourself, what obligations in my life are really measuring my worth, and which are serving it? What would happen if you cared for yourself with the same intensity you give to everyone else? The car payment, after all, is not the trap. It's the mirror, and the real freedom begins when you stop letting the mirror dictate your value.